It was a warm summer's night in 1955 when the Sutton family witnessed something otherworldly on their property. What began as glowing eyes and small creatures peering into their home quickly escalated into full-blown gunfire outside. News of this event spread rapidly, first popularizing the phrase, "little green men." Today, we explore the fascinating case of the Kelly-Hopkinsville Encounter. This is Red Web. Welcome back, Task Force, to another episode of Red Web, the podcast all about unsolved mysteries, true crime, and the supernatural. I'm your resident mystery enthusiast, Trevor Collins, and joining me hearing this case for the very first time, Alfredo Diaz.
Oh, you said gunfire?
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. We're just... And then you said little green man?
Little green men, gunfire... very Van Meter style, if you remember that episode where they saw creatures outside just started blasting.
Yeah, that's right. Was it that farm?
Yes, over in Iowa.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just, making sure I hear this correctly. That's all.
No. It's an interesting case.
All right, so we're shooting at aliens.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's like the smartest thing to do. Like if I was walking my dogs in the middle of the night and I saw a little figure on top of the house or something,
yeah,
or down the street,
gonna give him a little boom bop.
I feel like if it started approaching me, or at least if it was in my home, or somehow it was more legal, I guess I would. I don't know, man. Like. It started fronting on me.
Yeah.
Or, oh my God, started hopping house to house on rooftops.
Ooh.
Oh my God.
Something like Krampus or something?
Yeah, man. Hell no. I wouldn't start firing off, but I would unholster if I had a gun on me.
Oh, so you're getting your hand prepped, You're cracking your knuckles with a fist.
I'll be prepped. What am I going to do against something like that, man?
Very little. Zero, in fact. These are maybe multi-dimensional beings, maybe intergalactic, who knows? This thing's going to hold out its hand like Neo and stop your bullets with a smile,
Exactly. But you would at least say you tried.
Right. Maybe ants are doing something to us when we're just kind of going about our lives. You're a kid with a magnifying glass if you're extra sadistic, or you're just kind of walking down the sidewalk and don't see them. Maybe they're down there going like, here comes another.
Yeah.
And they're starting to launch little sand granules at you, but you have no idea, right? I feel like it'd be of that nature. I always go back to ants and humans when I think of humans and aliens. I don't know if that's a scale thing. It's not a technical thing, but I don't know. This topic is super fascinating. It is, honestly, it's one of the ones that helped popularize that old adage, little green men, describing aliens as these maybe 3-foot tall creatures, big heads, big eyes, green. You also have the Greys, which is a popular title, but we're kind of exploring all the old etymology lately of aliens, flying saucers, little green men, etc. These titles or these names that haven't really been around in more recent years. Now we got UAPs, and you're talking about interdimensional beings, things like that. But this one comes from a task force member, actually two of them, Patreon member Pink Frapp, as well as Instagram user Noah True. So thank you guys so much for submitting this one to us.
Oh my God, we have 2 members? That's awesome.
We got 2 members out here. Task Force, you can always submit topics if you are a Task Force member on Patreon, especially. You get some extra priority. We have a form over there where you can fill that out, and we always look through that when we kind of build out our creative slate, they call it in the business. And while talking about the Task Force, I want to give some shout outs, of course, as we always do. We got Melissa P., X Wild Angel, Sir Curbs, Sabrina Hall, Andy Schrock, Chase Martinez, TGYK94, just to name a few. Thank you all so much. RedWebPod.com. That's our Patreon page. Fredo, what might they find over there as some thank yous, some shows of gratitude for the direct support?
Oh, you can see a little show called Movie Club where we watch a ton of different movies, from classics like, I will say this because it is a banger of a classic, The Exorcist, or some terrible movies. Recently, we've done Saw, and we've also done a handful of foreign films as well. I know eventually one of us is going to pick Jason X. So it ranges from amazing to absolute dog water.
I feel like Jason X has to be on the horizon.
It's coming. It's inevitable.
So Christian, help me out. If I'm thinking in my mind's web well enough, I think the Saw episode comes out this Friday.
Indeed it does.
And if I go chaos mode, I might pick Jason X to be the next one, which would be March 7th.
I haven't seen like any other Jason. And then we go straight to X, which I've seen like a clip or two on TV.
Really? Oh, that's awesome. I'm so glad you haven't seen it.
Yes.
Listen, there's a scene where he gets rebuilt with nanobots, and I think that's all you need to know that this movie's going to be exactly what it is.
It's awesome.
But yeah, in addition to Movie Club, which you get twice a month, there are store discounts every month. You get this podcast ad-free. We put up bonus videos, or last month we put up a bonus episode of Red Web all about the New Jersey drones, if you remember that, in December. But yeah, every month we also put out some bonus stuff, peeks behind the scenes. You get teases as to what's coming. We kind of reveal the episodes every Sunday ahead of time for people over there. So yeah, check it out, redwebpod.com. Give us some support. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and answer me this question, Patreon, okay?
Riddle me this, Task Force.
All right, answer me this. If cheetahs are the fastest animal
Let them have this.
on the planet, then why do we measure our cars in horsepower?
Very good question.
I want to see answers in the chat, and no, I don't want answers from big corp horse.
Right.
Okay.
We don't need to hear from Big Farm.
We don't
and I
need to
don't mean
hear
the
from 'em.
medicine.
We don't. Okay. So just go ahead and solve that for me. That'd be great. I have a friend that wants to know the answer to that.
Yeah. We actually have a floor for this, Fredo. I need you to know we just developed Subfloor 86. We do have some animal-sized treadmills, some for horses, some for cheetahs, and there's at least 13 and a half scientists with those thick-rimmed glasses down there and clipboards. Oh, yeah. 28 clipboards and 13 and a half scientists just kind of crunching away on those numbers, you know?
Crunching away, trying to figure stuff out.
We got to get to the bottom of this.
That's where subscriptions go to.
Listen, it's a fiduciary environment. We're very responsible, and we put it to science. It all goes straight to science.
It all goes back.
And speaking of science, let me take you back to 1955. The best segue we've ever had. Leave it uncut and raw. Oh, okay. Now, as the sun set on August 21st of 1955, an extended family of 12, collectively known as the Suttons, witnessed something that they could not explain. This is a moment where I want to stop down immediately because there was a lot of confusion I was beginning to have as we started our research journey. Jillian did an amazing job pulling all this data together, collating all the information, but I have to say, again, it's one of those cases where it depends on the source. You know, I've seen 12 people listed, I've seen 10, I've seen 7, I've seen it including neighbors, I've seen it only with the family. So there's a lot of different ways to go about this. We, again, looking at the broadest swath possible, this is the information we pulled together. You know, I wanted to give that caveat, that transparency as we descended into this story.
Yeah, it's a game of telephone.
100%. And we will come to find out that there's a lot of missing information immediately following this story because the family was seeking privacy. And that will kind of play into maybe some of the theories, kind of some of your gut instinct as we go. Does that show validity? Does it show maybe mistake? We'll get there. But I do think the lack of wanting to talk about it in the aftermath kind of prevented a lot of available information. So, you know, people filled in the gaps and news stories went pretty crazy with it at times.
I will say, I do respect like the whole privacy aspect.
Yeah.
You know, not everyone needs to know everything about you.
Sure. 100%.
your private life. So I get that.
Especially if, you know, you're dealing with something, I don't know, otherworldly. You might just kind of be like, yeah, that was crazy. I was scared and I need to leave that behind.
Especially when like everyone nowadays is trying to monetize anything.
Sure.
So yeah, you know.
This would be slapped on social media, you know, the reels, the TikToks immediately. So the family itself, to the best of our knowledge, consisted of the widowed matriarch, Glennie Langford, who was 50, her 2 adult sons, both 25, and their wives, 29 and 27. It also included her 3 younger children, 12, 10, and 7 respectively, and her brother-in-law and 2 family friends known as the Taylors, who were 21 and 18, who happened to be visiting at the time. Now, like I said, the amount of family members present fluctuates depending on the source, but we found the adults' ages, which were also reported to be different things or not reported at all. These ages came from a written report in Project Blue Book, which we recently covered. I have a screenshot of that page for you, Fredo, because I think it's so fascinating that there was, I believe, a near 100-page report on this incident in Project Blue Book. So if you want to take a look, it's like a minorly redacted letter.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, handwritten copy, 8/22/55. Damn.
Yeah.
My name is blank, age 50, and I live at blank, Hopkinsville, Route 6, Kentucky.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it goes through some details. On Sunday night of August 31st, 55, about 10:30 p.m. Yeah, certified true copy here. Oh my God, it's authenticated. Interesting. Yeah, so this is like some official reports.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about Project Blue Book as we go through. Again, we did a whole episode on Project Blue Book itself, its origins, what it was doing, why it's always kind of associated with these UFO stories. So go take a look at that episode. But yeah, we'll refer to this report periodically throughout the episode. Now, the Suttons lived in a modest farmhouse in the small town of Kelly, Kentucky, on the western side of the state. The house was very small and reportedly had no running water, no phone, and no television. In fact, for the sake of the story to come, I wanted to go ahead and give you, Fredo and Task Force, the images of the layout of this house. So that way you can know where people are as I kind of describe the scene when there are both inside and outside. Task Force, as always, it's in the YouTube upload as well as our socials at RedWebPod.
Oh, damn. Okay. Yeah, this looks like the floor plan for when like you buy your house and stuff.
Right.
It gives you like the rundown. I see a refrigerator, fireplace, couch, bed. Okay.
Yeah.
Dog walkway. All right. Maybe that's the front there on the north.
Yeah, that'd kind of be like the foyer there.
Yeah.
Where it's like a narrow room where you first walk in. To the right is the single bedroom. To the left is the living room with a kitchen attached. So a kind of an L on the side shape.
Interesting. This is like a single bedroom house?
Yeah, very, very, very small.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we're talking about 55. It's just because there's like, I guess you would call it the master bedroom. Has two beds, one on each side, and then there's a stove in the middle.
Yeah.
And then,
yeah, probably for heat, because again, it's not like wired. This is an old, almost like a smaller shack of a house, right? Where it's not properly wired or plumbed. So that's where you're getting your heating from.
Yeah, and you step down from the kitchen, you go into the living room, there's a fireplace, and again, two beds, one on each side of the room, and then a couch. Yeah, interesting. Okay, you got two beds in the living room. Yeah, this is back then.
So this house, just to give you an idea more geographically, it's about 8 miles or 13 kilometers north of the larger town of Hopkinsville. Again, the name Kelly-Hopkinsville's in this arena. Hopkinsville itself is about 20 miles north of Tennessee. Generally, we're just looking at southwest Kentucky. Now, at around 7 p.m., Billy Ray Taylor was outside getting water when he saw bright lights in the sky. Taylor is going to be the centerpiece of this experience, and he claimed to see what he described as, quote, a silvery object, end quote, silently flying towards their home. So whatever this was, there was bright lights in the sky heading in the direction of the house. And he also stated that he saw exhaust or smoke seemingly emanating from this craft that included, quote, all the colors of the rainbow, end quote.
Yeah, I wouldn't know what to do. You kind of just hope it goes away.
Right.
I'm not equipped for that.
Don't stop at our place.
Yeah, I can't diagnose it or something. You just hope you're not in its path.
Yeah. Now, as I kind of paint this picture using his words, see if you can visualize it in your mind. We don't know how high it was, so a silvery object silently flying, some smoke or exhaust coming off of it, and that smoke was kind of all the colors of the rainbow. This will play a little bit into the theories, but this is just the beginning of everything to come. So, seemingly this object went over the house before suddenly stopping mid-air and then dropping to the ground. Where exactly it landed in relation to the farmhouse is unclear. We don't really hear of or see this aircraft again. When Taylor returned to the house, he told everyone what he saw was a, quote, flying saucer, end quote, but no one really believed him. About an hour later at 8 p.m., the Sutton's dog began barking at the back door in the bedroom of the house. So again, referring to the diagram I showed you, I guess it's not the north, it's a little bit northeast, that top wall basically.
Yeah.
That's where the dog is stood. That triangle that kind of swings out, that's indicating a door. So he's there looking outside, barking profusely at something, as if something's there. Obviously, dogs have heightened senses and they notice it stands out. He's not always barking, but suddenly, man, he's onto something. So Billy Ray and one of the Langford sons, Cecil Sutton, aka Lucky, went to go check on the dog and see why it was suddenly barking so much. When they walked into the room, they saw what they described as large glowing eyes looking through the back door. And apparently these eyes were right up against the door, seemingly studying the dog or looking into the house. Whatever it was right up against the glass.
Hell no. Hell no.
Well, what do? Your dog's over there.
Yeah, I mean, I know. I throw my life on the line for my little corgis.
Yeah, scoop them up.
Yeah, but like, I don't know, would you run? Like out the back, or like out the opposite door?
I would hope that, I don't have a pup yet in my life, but I would hope that I would have one of those movie-trained pups where I could go, Joseph, get over here. And he'd perk up, look, and walk right to you. Because I just would be terrified that if I went to go scoop up the corgi, right, your little two pups, that whatever it is smashes through the glass, out you go. A little bait and switch,
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's rough if you have like pets or even kids in that matter.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, upon looking closer, these large eyes, again, were glowing, and they seemed to be from a glowing being. The being itself was about 3.5 feet tall, these large eyes no longer floating in the air, but this whole creature kind of glowing. Its head was extremely round and looked as if it was almost too big for the body, which had long, skinny arms, as they described, almost reaching the ground.
Oh, man, you better punt that thing.
I mean, 3.5 feet tall, definitely kickable, almost prime kickability. But at the same time, like, it's got some reach. It's Michael Phelps arms.
Yeah, but also it's like, what are you going to tackle something that's 3 feet? I feel like I'm going to miss it. You know what I'm saying?
Right. That's an amazing running back right there.
Yeah, you're going to try and bend it like Beckham and you go kick that thing. I was just saying.
Yeah, it's possible.
If you had to square up against this thing, I don't feel like you're going to tackle it first. I feel like you're going to try and use the legs.
I mean, I think I just run, recognizing that my legs are a lot longer than that little being, unless it uses its arms to run, in which case that'd be terrifying.
Freaky gallop thing. Oh.
Yeah. Ugh. But the being was also described as silver in color, which will be important. But with all these descriptions aside, there are 2 sketches that come from the time period based on what the family described these as, and I have them both for you here if you want to take a look.
Yeah, take a peek here.
Yeah, brush those off. Let me know what you're thinking.
Whoa! Look at this guy. He's got like little. I don't know how to even describe that. They're like, he looks like his head looks a lot more robotic than I thought it would.
Yeah, like eyes being so far out to like fish eyes off to the side.
Yeah, they look like they look like knobs.
Little knobs.
And then then the head. I mean, this isn't like a detailed drawing, but it just seems more like a helmet. Very much like a light bulb.
Yeah.
Very pointy bottom though. And then its ears are kind of like really thin. It's got some lines on it, but it seems like it's more like, I don't know, like the flab, like ears you would see in like a superhero's helmet. You know what I mean? That are like tacked on, as opposed to its actual ears.
This is a kid in a Batman costume.
This I'm saying. They went to Spirit Halloween. They got an outfit and they're messing with the wrong people.
They're just at the wrong time, wrong door. Check out the second image. It has a little bit more detail, some musculature going on, but the ears I would describe as kind of like bat-like, in the sense that they're like, it looks like raw flesh, like bat wings have just like that fleshy appearance.
Okay, well, now I'm looking at the second picture, which has more detail. Now he's buffed up. Okay, so one, he looks like I could just beat the hell out of this thing. The second one looks like he's got some lower body. Like he's just like dense. He looks a little denser. He's got more muscle to him, longer, sharper claws. Arms aren't as long. His eyes are very fisheye now, and he's got a mouth, which before in the other drawing was just a line across, but now he's got a mouth, a little nose. He's very fish-like looking, and his ears look more like kind of like fins.
Yeah. Very, if I had to guess if this was worldly, like amphibian-like.
Yeah.
You know, like a salamander that learned to walk upright.
Yes. Yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah. Now, by all accounts, when referring to this creature as they're kind of stood in awe as these glowing eyes suddenly turn into, no, that's a glowing being. Oh my gosh, it's only 3.5 feet tall and our dog is barking excessively at it. It seemed like the creature's hands were like on the window or on the screen as it was peering into the house. Now, in response to the sight of this unknown creature, Lucky and Taylor went full Van Meter visitor, as I mentioned. They went full Van Meter visitor on this creature and shot at it with 20 gauge shotgun, a 22 caliber rifle. I mean, they're just trying to put this thing out. They don't know what it is, but they know, they're in the wilderness. These are probably hunting individuals, that this is some sort of maybe predator, and that it's maybe studying the dog as prey, so they just go full instinct.
Oh, hell. I mean, a lot of times I'd be like, just let it rip, You got this thing outside looming over your windows and stuff. It seems threatening. I'm not opposed to it.
Listen, if you're an alien creature, maybe start showing up during the day, not flying in, beaming people up at night, looking through windows. If you're going to come here, that's fine. Just understand the etiquette. We sleep then.
Yeah. Start freaking us out.
That's like when we're out of our shells. You just come on, we're sleeping. So what's interesting here is that the being didn't seem to be affected at all by the bullets. But interestingly, they described it as raising its arms, quote, like it was being robbed, end quote, before it then flipped, moving away from the house. And another source actually claims that the creature instead actually approached the door with its hands up. I'm not understanding maybe the juxtaposition here. One's saying it put its hands up like it was being robbed, did a backflip, and off it backs off, like backpedals. One says it approaches. Either way, it did eventually move away. And as it did, they described the creature as kind of floating rather than walking on its legs. And the two men then retreated into the living room with the rest of the family, at which point another creature was spotted through the window of this room. So of course, the natural response was to hide and hunker down, right? Oh wait, no, the two men went outside and continued blasting off, again, taking their shotgun and their rifle outside to fire upon whatever this peeping alien, whatever it was doing.
Okay, so now we're starting to creep into gun madness here.
Maybe.
Just running down the block, firing off.
Yeah. So Langford actually told author Isabel Davis in an interview this, quote, "It looked like, I need somebody to Photoshop this and send it to us. It's very much like Fredo describing a UFO as two plates with an upturned teacup."
Damn, look at that.
I need to see this. So here's what she describes it as, quote, "It looked like a 5-gallon gasoline can with a head on top and small legs. It was a shimmering bright metal like on my refrigerator," end quote. So she also saw it. I think that's going to be important because we will come to find out that not many of the family described what they saw that night.
I mean, that's an interesting way to describe it.
5-gallon gasoline can with then a head on top with some small legs. Yeah. Shining like a refrigerator.
Yeah, I feel like they go into some detail and then just kind of slapped on limbs.
I feel like this would be the worst time for a basic prank phone call where someone calls in and says, "Is your fridge running? Well, you better go shoot it, because what if it was just a refrigerator outside, just running around?"
Well, then that's where you go, thank goodness, and then you wonder why someone dropped off a fridge.
Yeah.
It's a sigh of relief, though.
Yeah, right. Unless it's sentient.
Oh, true.
Okay, so as Taylor walked out the back door, he claimed talons grazed the top of his head, seemingly grabbing at his hair.
What?
Right? So this is when they're stepping outside to blast off at this either second creature or the original creature, whatever it was, peering in through this window. They stepped outside, some sort of claw-like thing grabbed at his head and at his hair. The two men, as you might expect, then began firing on the creature. It was up on the rooftop. There was another in a nearby tree. And these creatures still seemingly were unaffected by the bullets. They would do things like flip and then disappear into the darkness before then reappearing in a different tree or somewhere else around the house or somewhere else in the backyard. The exact locations and the amount of creatures is uncertain. Some reports do claim very specific numbers, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later on, but we really don't know based on their actual authentic reports.
It's game over, man. You got multiples and they're just shooting at them with all your might and they're just toying with you, it seems like.
Yeah. Well, this went on for a few hours. Creatures appearing, gunfire, brief pause.
What?
Don't really know all the details in between these hours, but yeah, it went on for some time. And I'm thinking, after the first 10 minutes of gunfire not working and these things staying around,
I'm trying to get to a car. Or, well, I mean, yeah, I'm trying to just get out of there.
I would start to think like maybe I'm not in danger.
Yeah.
Maybe what I'm doing is not working. But clearly, if the bullets aren't working, I'm either wildly missing or it is impervious. And I was always the one in danger, and yet I'm still here. So it's a very interesting moment, I think, after hours of doing this, to reflect on it. And thankfully, Langford actually attempted to de-escalate the situation. She reminded everybody that these creatures had not tried to attack them by this point, and that clearly the bullets weren't doing anything. And eventually, whatever these creatures were did seemingly flee off into the night. Now, when the Suttons finally felt safe enough, they themselves ran out of the house, drove in 2 separate cars to the Hopkinsville police station. They told the police, quote, "We need help. We've been fighting them for nearly 4 hours," end quote.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't know. Fighting is the right word, or if it's like swinging at the air.
Right.
But yeah, and that's all according to the Kentucky New Era. And we'll kind of talk about their article here a little bit more as well. This episode of Red Web is sponsored by Rocket Money. The start of the new year is the perfect time to get organized, set your goals, and prioritize what matters most, like financial wellness, which, of course, looking at all the cost of goods and services, feels more important than ever. Thanks to Rocket Money, those goals can be achievable. They show you all of your subscriptions in one place, and it's super convenient. You can track all your credit cards in that same one location, and they help you cancel all the ones, even the ones that you've forgotten about, the ones that you've been paying for. Boom, they got you covered. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Rocket Money will even help negotiate lower bills on your behalf. They automatically scan your bills to find opportunities to save. Then you can ask them to negotiate for you. They'll deal with customer service so you don't have to. I use Rocket Money to track all of my credit cards. It's just super convenient. You can see what you spend it on, where you're overspending, underspending, whatever that might look like for you, whatever your goals might be. But I really appreciate that they scan for savings and scan for subscriptions that I may want to cancel. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money by going to rocketmoney.com/redweb today. That's rocketmoney.com/redweb. One more time, rocketmoney.com/redweb. This episode of Red Web is sponsored by Shopify. When you think about businesses with criminally good sales like Magic Spoon, sure, you think about in-demand product, right? Premeditated branding, scary good marketing, all the good stuff. But an often overlooked secret is actually a business behind the business, which makes all the selling and buying simple and easy for that business to make happen, right? And for millions of companies, that business behind the business, that's Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet, all of Earth. And the not so secret, with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts go abandoned and way more sales going. So if you're looking to grow your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling and strolling, on the web, in your store, on your feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more sell with Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout that Magic Spoon uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/redweb. All lowercase. Go to shopify.com/redweb to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/redweb. But now at this point, this is kind of the event. I want to move now, because the police are involved, into the investigation phase. The police visited the house with the family and then searched the area for these little men, as they called them at that time, from around 1 to 2 a.m. So bless them, they came out and they said, let's get eyes on this thing. If you're feeling threatened, this is happening right now, We are on site.
Okay, I mean, that's respectable.
Yeah. The police themselves then contacted Madisonville, Christian County, and Kentucky State Police requesting backup because what they're hearing is pretty alarming. They don't know the number of creatures in sight, etc. They also actually contacted the local newspaper, and Chief Russell Greenwell even contacted Fort Campbell Air Force Base, at which point we read that 4 military officers were eventually sent to the home, but in reflecting on the Project Blue Book memo on the matter, it seemed like 25 people in total were at the scene for about 2 hours. Now, this might have been this initial investigation or maybe a later time, but either way, neither party really found too much. In fact, the police didn't really see any animal tracks. There was no physical evidence of an aircraft that had landed nearby, right? The rainbow smoking silent thing that he saw at the beginning.
Right.
That said, police did see the bullet holes in the back door from the initial sighting. So it does stand to some reason that the family saw something, or at least some of them saw something, enough for them to actually physically shoot out through the walls of the house or the back door of the house towards this thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's also like group paranoia. Maybe one person saw something, started firing off, and they're like, "Oh, I'm in it. Let's go." And it's like a predator scene. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, they all start firing into the jungle.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, guess you question there. Like, did you guys take like drugs of any sort or something? Like,
right. Where's your water source at? Let me take a look.
Yeah, pretty much. But there's really not much you can do there. I mean, you go there, you don't see anything, and then you go, well, I mean, they were firing off, though.
Yeah.
Most people wouldn't want to destroy their home.
You know, you got only 2 back doors, and one's now riddled with bullets.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really all the police did, in fact. I mean, they come out, they go, well, unfortunately, we're not seeing anything. You let us know if anything else happens. We did see the bullet holes, so, they took note of that. And according to the Kentucky New Era article, after police left, these creatures seemed to return to the home at approximately 3:30 a.m., almost like they were paying attention, almost like as soon as the police left and everything went calm for the night, they said, all right, it's witching hour, we're back. Mrs. Langford's written report in the Project Blue Book files actually states that she saw this creature outside her bedroom window at this time, and she sent her sons to make it leave. The family claimed to hear noises on the roof, starting about this point and going throughout the night. This time, the Suttons did not shoot at the creatures.
They ran out of bullets, or they were just like, I guess we'll just wait and see what happened.
I think it was kind of like, listen, the bullets didn't do anything last time. Let's observe. Like, maybe go shoo them off, chase them off, like, make some loud noises, run at them with pots and pans and yell. I don't know exactly what they did.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, see if you can get them to leave. If not, this is just kind of the observations from that night, that they seemingly were on the roof, kind of clamoring around, and that's kind of about it for the rest of that night.
Man, the intelligence to just kind of like sit and wait and then come back. Also annoying as hell.
Yeah, it does feel like intelligence, or it feels like pranky, or it also feels like you were looking for it, and so now, a branch brushes the roof and you're like, it's here. There's a lot in the theories to explore for sure. And I think we do have a bit of an answer. A lot of the theories are pretty strong though, and so maybe there's some sort of through thread between them all. But in the morning, many people traveled to the farm, including multiple law enforcement personnel, reporters, other citizens of Kelly, people just fascinated with the fast traveling story of that night. The story traveled all over the United States. It actually helped, like I indicated earlier, popularize the concept of, quote, little green men, end quote. This then popularized the idea, perhaps, or helped with it, the idea of shorter, bigger heads, big eyes, green skin, all of that stuff. Now, of course, news outlets, especially on this story without much information to go on, kind of leaned into the exaggeration of it all, maybe to get those papers sold or what have you. But for example, the Kentucky New Era reported that the number of creatures was somewhere between 12 and 15, that this house was swarmed with these alien creatures. But all we really know is that there was 1, maybe 2 confirmed, or at least reported sightings from the family.
Right, but I'm sure, everyone wanted to like get crazy with the story, and then they have their own spin.
Yeah. The more sensational it is, maybe the more papers you sell. And at that time, the story actually became known as the Hopkinsville Goblins. So I don't know if that helps you see this creature any different, but it does look kind of goblin-y.
I could see that. I could see why they call it a goblin.
Yeah. Now also that next morning, it was August 22nd, local radio station host Andrew Ledwith, aka Bud, arrived at the farmhouse to interview the Suttons. He drew the sketches based on the descriptions they gave, and I believe his sketch was the first one. It was slightly more simple, where the arms are kind of skinnier, and he just drew the outline as opposed to kind of sketching in muscles. I believe the muscle sketch might have been part of the Project Blue Book report.
Yeah, because that one had more details, definitely a lot more fish-like.
Yeah. So he's laying down this initial sketch based on what the family said the next morning. He's primarily a radio host, but, you know, he sketches in his free time. He put a lot of detail into those ears, though.
He really did.
It's kind of like Napoleon Dynamite, you know. It took me 10 hours to finish the shading on your ears. Now, after 10 days of constant visitors to the farmhouse, the Sutton family sold the house. I mean, pretty quickly. They were kind of like, let's move away from Kelly. We don't want this unwanted attention. We don't want to become the carnival of the town where people come to see potentially whatever these creatures are. You know what? Let's just leave.
Yeah, that'd be annoying. That'd be really annoying to deal with.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Every single day, people coming down, hey, you see the aliens anymore? Can I see one? You got one in a cage that I could visit? Yeah. Now, before we move into the theories, I want to reflect on the Project Blue Book documentation on this case. Like I said, there's around 100 pages, maybe a little over, in relation to these Hopkinsville goblins. However, despite this, it doesn't appear that there was any official investigation by the group. These files actually relied on the police investigation and those reports. Project Blue Book ultimately concluded that there was, quote, insufficient data for evaluation, end quote. Or in other words, they didn't really think that there was enough information to debunk or properly investigate what was going on. So they couldn't really lean one way or the other, but it wasn't enough for them to come out and do a full-on investigation. It's worth mentioning that much of the correspondence in these documents within Project Blue Book's documentation explicitly mock this case. There's a lot of like open thoughts on this, thinking, it's a little silly. I don't know much about I don't think this, you know, and that will come to pass in theory number 3 that we're going to talk about. We're going to start a little bit more mundane and then start to obviously finalizing with aliens. But, you know, as we go on into more fantastic theories, there is an excerpt that I want to read from these files. And I think, yeah, it's a little mocking, but it also elucidates a lot about the situation the family was in, and I'm very curious to get your thoughts when we get there.
Oh, okay.
This episode of Red Web is sponsored by Factor. Ready to optimize your nutrition this year, Task Force? Well, Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes, so you can fuel right and feel great at the same time, no matter what life throws at you. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, perfect for any active, busy lifestyle, and with 40 options across 8 dietary preferences on the menu each week, it's easy to pick meals tailored to your goals. Choose from preferences like Calorie Smart or Protein Plus or Keto. Again, whatever your diet is, reach your goals this year with ingredients you can trust and convenience that you just can't beat. I rely on Factor when I'm looking for a tasty, protein-rich meal, no matter if it's lunch or dinner or whatever you have. If you're busy, Factor is a great option for getting in your diet and having something tasty while you're doing it. I've never had a Factor meal let me down. Eat smart with Factor by going to factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use code FACTORPODCAST to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. Once again, that's code FACTORPODCAST at factormeals.com/factorpodcast, and you're going to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. This episode of Red Web is sponsored by BetterHelp. We often hear about the red flags that we should avoid, but what if we focused on looking for green flags in friends and partners? And if you're not sure what they look like, therapy can help you identify these green flags, actively practice them in your relationships, and then embody the green flag energy yourself. Whether you're dating, you're married, you're building a friendship, or you're just looking to work on yourself, it's time to form relationships that love you back. In my experience, therapy is a great way to learn new tools, whether it be coping skills for things that life can throw at you, understanding yourself better and how to move through life in a more happy and wholesome way. And I appreciate that BetterHelp is a great way to step into that arena. It can be daunting to find the right person, and they've got you covered. BetterHelp is fully online, making therapy affordable and convenient, serving over 5 million people worldwide. Access a diverse network of more than 30,000 credentialed therapists with a wide range of specialties. Easily switch therapists anytime at no extra cost. Discover your relationship green flags with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/redweb to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/redweb. But before we do, I feel like we have to go with kind of some of the more obvious ones. And that's starting out with a standard little creature. You know, we've seen this theory in many cryptid and alien cases before, and it's been theorized that the Suttons simply saw an owl that night. Starting off with the main, quote, evidence, the eyes of an owl do glow brightly when interacting with light. This is due to the reflective tissue behind their retinas known as the tapetum lucidum. It's basically a layer of tissue behind the retina that reflects light back through the retina, which gives the retina a second chance to register what it's seeing, register that light and process it. And so you can get increased vision in low light, something you'd see in cats and dogs, you know, when their eyes glow, that kind of rainbow look.
Yep.
The flips that they kept seeing into the air that night could have been birds' wings in response to shots being fired. And if it was an owl, it doesn't necessarily have to be a 3.5 foot tall thing. That could have been a mistake. And maybe when these things are flying off, or maybe just an owl being small in general, they were hard to hit. Now, depending on the type of shell they're using in the shotgun, it scatters quite a bit. But that said, it would explain, you know, maybe why these things kept showing up, because they were either missing or maybe once they shot an owl down, they wouldn't notice in the night. I don't know. It could explain also some of the thinking that, oh, it's not walking backwards, it's floating. In particular, though, I do want to say, if you look at the image, and I have one for you here, if you look at the image of a great horned owl, which has bright yellow eyes and talons, it's got long wings, you know, the wings could look like arms that hang down to the ground. Their eyes would glow at night. They do average 22 inches in height, which is just short of 2 feet. So it's not 3.5, but it's, you know, perception could be strange if you're looking through the window and it stood out there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, through the window at night.
A dog would probably see it and bark at it.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be wild if it's just like an owl and everyone just started popping off.
I mean, yeah. I don't know how many lights they had on that side.
You know, it could line up very easily.
Yeah. You know, it's got those like feathers that stick up on the side of its head that could look like those big, long, pointy ears. The band of white along its chin could kind of make that mouth shape. You know what I'm saying? That straight mouth that you're seeing at the bottom of its round head.
Yep. Yeah, I could see this.
The beak could be the nose kind of thing. And again, we don't know how many lights are on at night, if there are any. And so maybe it's just the light emanating from the house, which is enough to make the eyes glow, which is enough to give a silhouette, which makes it look like it's glowing, and then it flies off. I would say the only odd thing would be an owl being on the ground, but if it pounced on a mouse, maybe it just freshly caught a mouse and the dog saw it and started barking, and then the story unfolds from there.
Yeah. I mean, it very well could be.
It lines up visually, at least. Still some holes, for example, that flying saucer. So in regards to that, I do want to talk about the next theory. It's possible that what Taylor, and only Taylor, witnessed that night could have been a meteor. What's interesting is that the other family members suggested this theory when he first walked into the house, claiming that he saw a flying saucer. Now, this would have been before the creatures arrived at the house. And when you think about what he saw, it was silent, it was glowing, and it had smoke trailing behind it. That does sound like some sort of burning rock falling through the atmosphere. It doesn't explain why it stopped and plummeted and supposedly landed. But if you didn't know what it was and you saw this thing for the first time, it would certainly draw your attention and make you a little bit afraid, I'd think.
I mean, just talk about a coincidence, though.
Yeah.
For that to happen and line up the way it is.
Well, we'll talk about it in the next theory, but it's there's a groundwork that's been laid here. And to kind of tease at what we're going to talk about, I think the family is already on edge. And so these things that are happening, whether it be the meteor, maybe it being the owl, maybe it being both, is laying on a foundation of already being on edge and already maybe looking for something or primed to see something. But before we get into that, I do want to say it's worth mentioning that the Kappa Cygni meteor shower was active and was reported by Fort Campbell observers around this time. Now, this meteor shower happens every year between June and September. It usually peaks around mid-August, which is near where we're at. Sometimes there's flares, sometimes there's fireballs, but typically the Kappa Cygnids are most visible or only visible every 7 years, and 1955 was not supposed to be one of those years. So regardless of that timing, it just means that it's possible that Taylor saw one of these fireballs associated with this shower, and that his fears from the sighting of this meteor led him to mistake an owl or some other unknown creature for an alien, right? And so maybe he did see something in the sky that night. To him, it was strange, and then the creatures was just a symptom of that.
I mean,
it's a lot to unpack.
I guess like they're pretty accurate in tracking like the, when things are supposed to happen. Not that it wouldn't line up outside of it, but like for the most part, scientists are like, yeah, it tracks like this and it comes every 7 years, Like there's a pattern it follows.
Yeah. And so it's a reasonable explanation, but also like if it's, see, I don't know enough about the Kappa Cygni meteor shower, but if it's only visible every 7 years and 1955 isn't one of them, I'm inclined to say, maybe not. But if it happens every year and it's only visible, I don't know how that works, to be totally honest. Christian, I'm very curious if there's any other like details on that particular shower that I'm missing, because I don't want to pretend to be an expert here. It's just part of the theory.
So in looking into it some more, it looks like it doesn't happen every year. It tends to happen every 7 years, but there is some variation. For example, it happened in 2020 and in 2021. So it's not a consistent 7 years, but for what it's worth, it doesn't look like it was documented to have been seen in 1955.
Okay. So helps close the gap on the meteor theory, but maybe it was just a random meteor.
Right.
Maybe it wasn't like the Kappa Cygni shower or something. Okay, well, interesting. Rainbow smoke. We're talking, it was like 7:30 at night. So I have to believe that sun is close to setting. Christian, I'm going to throw you another curveball. Can you look up sunset in August in Kentucky? There are websites that can do that. I'm very curious because when you see rainbow smoke or like clouds, I have to believe it's like golden hour,
Yeah.
And so like it could still be some sort of meteor, maybe just not something like the Kappa Cygni stuff.
Looks like sunset on August 21st, 1955 in Kentucky would have been at 8:26 p.m.
We're talking golden hour. I think we got ourselves some sort of smoking meteor. I don't know.
Man, they should have like grabbed that and made money off of it or something.
Yeah. Okay. So those are the most mundane, try to explain things theories. This next one, I'm fascinated by. I just I don't want to bury this lead any further. So one theory from Project Blue Book documents is that these Suttons were scared by one or two circus monkeys who had escaped their cages.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's unclear exactly when this happened, but the trucks for the King's Circus did drive down Interstate 68 and through Hopkinsville at some point in time. And as this theory goes on to say, one or two monkeys might have escaped from this traveling circus. Now, this is where I want to read a memo found in the Project Blue Book files by Major Johnny Albert, who wrote that a monkey may have been covered in a silver paint, giving the appearance of an alien. It's a long one.
Okay, a monkey covered in silver paint. I mean, that makes sense. Why you'd be freaked out and start opening fire. You don't see that every day.
Some Jumanji vibes.
I feel like you would hear the monkey. I feel like the monkey would leave and you wouldn't be in a 4-hour fight with said monkey.
Yeah, I don't know. So before I start reading this, I do want to point you to two screenshots, right? These are pages from the Project Blue Book files. If you want to either read along or at least see it for some sort of veracity, And as I dive in, I also want to say that, again, there was a lot of mocking within these documents. Some sizing people up and jumping to some conclusions. So, again, this is a quote, so forgive some harsh assessment of the family. But here it is, quote, Mrs. Langford, an impoverished widow woman who had grown up in this small community just outside of Hopkinsville with very little education. She belongs to the Holy Roller Church, and the night and evening of this occurrence had gone to a religious meeting, and she indicated that the members of the congregation and her 2 sons and their wives and some friends of her sons were also at this religious meeting and were worked up into a frenzy, becoming very emotionally unbalanced, and that after the religious meeting, they had discussed this strange article which she had heard about over the radio. End quote. This article basically talks about a monkey painted silver that was seen to be a small man, but it actually wasn't. So they're basically talking about a silver monkey in this Fort Worth article. And then the Project Blue Book memo continues on saying, quote, It is my opinion that the report of Mrs. Langford's sons was caused by one of 2 reasons. Either they actually did see what they thought was a little man, or there was a circus in the area and a monkey might have escaped, giving the appearance of a small man. End quote. Basically saying that they're trying to lay the groundwork for Mrs. Langford and the family, saying that because of a lack of education and because they were heavily primed by a very emotional religious meeting that night, that they were set up that night to see something. And because they immediately started talking about this silver monkey article coming out of Fort Worth, that again, they were primed to see little men that night. It's kind of what this memo is saying.
I mean, stranger things have happened than a monkey breaking out painted in silver.
Yeah.
Mental state, that's it's not uncommon at all.
I think there's something interesting here. And it's also hard to not try to take it as kind of accusatory. I think it really is just trying to be fact-based and saying listen, we're talking about someone who doesn't have the tools to maybe understand what they might be seeing, which is why they're pointing out the education. We're pointing out the religion because that night, the whole family ended up kind of highly emotional based on whatever religious ceremony they had gone to that day. And so they're in this position where they might misinterpret some other stimulus in the world or in nature or that night. And so basically, they're trying to say that even if it isn't escaped monkeys painted silver, that there really isn't much to go on here, that the family was essentially ready to see anything that night.
Yeah.
And when they did, it wasn't a surprise. It's why you definitely see the bullet holes, but you don't really see any other physical evidence. And this is kind of why Project Blue Book maybe didn't investigate this any further. Mm-hmm. It's why there's a lot of mocking in play with this particular experience. But I don't think the circus declared any missing monkeys, for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask next. Was there any reports of that? Because then that would be something that would, have been reported to the authorities. And then you go, oh, okay, well, then there was one report nearby or something.
Yeah. And the other wrinkle with that, this is kind of where it starts, the silver circus monkey angle. But the big wrinkle to it too is, yeah, they were in the area or driving through the area, but it's also kind of unclear when that would have been. And I don't know. So it does feel like maybe drawing a coincidence, or at least just trying to find a way to answer this. I don't know. It's totally possible that monkeys showed up. How would they have gotten there? A circus came through. It's an interesting theory, and there's a 5% chance that it's true.
Yeah.
But I think what's even more insightful is the kind of judgmental but harsh lens that Project Blue Book puts on the family that night to contextualize the things that we had no context for,
Yeah, I agree. They low-key throwing some shade.
There was definitely some shade. It was very bluntly all of these things. And so it's pretty much putting all the fault on them. And I'm listen, whatever the fault is, I'll be honest, they were terrified.
Right.
They're terrified enough to be shooting things.
Exactly.
Why don't we just gently explain to the family maybe what we think happened, rather than kind of going, yeah, that's on you. Maybe it was monkeys. Maybe it was nothing else. Whatever. Anyway.
Right. Instead of taking a whole risk. The family didn't want to take a risk, which is good for them.
Yeah. But with the silver monkey behind us, and all I can think of is legends from the hidden temple and the shrine of the silver monkey. I'll be honest, I actually watched an episode of that this last weekend because nostalgia hit hard, and I just watched like an hour of old Nickelodeon. I digress. But with the last theory, we know, we love, it's aliens, or is it, right? It's possible. It's always possible. You know, you got that sliver of a chance that what the Suttons saw that night was actually an alien. We did maybe have an aircraft come through. Maybe that craft then landed. And maybe what happened was these advanced aliens poured out and began studying the family. They had no issues with these physical projectiles, which left them unharmed, which then when the police came and investigated, they came back after the investigation was done to continue monitoring this family. I don't know. What's interesting, and you know, we talk a lot about, well, what's the motive? What's the motive for lying? What's the motive for like making up a story like this? And often, you know, we quote things like, or point to things like, you have a book, you have an article, you have a thing that you're selling. And what's interesting about this case is that the family really wasn't gaining anything from this story. And the police claimed that they were not the type of people who would actually go to the police easily. They would be the types of people that would want to handle things on their own, as indicated by, you know, the hours of firing upon this creature. And after receiving criticism when their story was publicized, the family was reluctant to discuss the incident any further, which again is, in a lot of these more obviously scammy faux stories,
right?
People are like, they want to be interviewed everywhere. They want to sell a book about it.
Oh, yeah.
And so I can't really, you know, like, yes, there's some reasonable explanations here. And yes, there's some character assassination that attempts to resolve what's happening here. But at the same time, it's hard to say, like, listen, there are some opposite trends happening here that do maybe lend some credency to them believing what they saw that night. Whether it actually be aliens or not is left to be decided. But you know, it is interesting because then they said, I've had enough of this. You know, I don't want the attention. I don't want them to return.
Right.
10 days later, they sold and moved.
Yeah, they moved.
Yeah.
So I don't see that being a thing, right? Like, what money is there to be made if you like left and you wanted your privacy? Like, that wasn't, I don't know. I don't think that's a thing to worry about here.
Yeah.
In most cases where someone's like, you know, we've had some cases where like, oh yeah, they've interviewed a lot, or we've even had some where they've interviewed a lot and then also done like a book, and you go, like, obviously get that bag, right? You're in that situation anyways. You have people like the news capitalizing off of like your situation, but it also brings that into account. Not here though.
Right, exactly. It's always just something to weigh into the equation, right? It's never a binary answer. But what is interesting too, and some see a potential smear campaign as a way to smother the truth, right? And so I just want to mention some of these pieces, is that rumors began to spread around town about the Suttons, and maybe throughout the news, that perhaps they were drinking heavily that night, though it is worth mentioning that they were very religious, and as part of their religion, they abstained from alcohol. Langford actually told author Isabel Davis, quote, "The newspapers told lies about us, said we were drinking," end quote, and that the articles had exaggerated or fabricated parts of the story, like the amount of little men and the skin color being green. And so she herself is saying, like, listen, this story has taken on a life beyond what we saw and what we claimed. Like, we saw what we saw. We didn't have answers for it. It terrified us. And now we have the story's blown up in a cartoonish way. It's exaggerative. There's smears now and rumors about us that are destructive. And now there's all this attention on us. And so, yeah, for people that are believers and that are ever looking for declassification, they see this as a way to kind of, as I like to say, muddy the waters of what could be truth of actual aliens having been here, but trying to prevent the populace and the public from really seeing that clearly and believing that.
Yeah. And it just sucks that they, like, I don't know. They seem like people that just didn't want to have to deal with any of that extra BS. And like, for people to, like, talk about them, it's just so unfortunate.
Yeah. No, it really is. And I mean, you know, Langford even said that, you know, people attempted to sell souvenirs on their land.
That's
and
wild.
she had to decline that. She's like, no, please. Like, so not only are they not gaining anything from this, they're actively saying, please don't be doing this, before obviously then leaving. But what's interesting, and I want to leave on this note, you know, Chief Greenwell, told the same interviewer of Langford, quote, "She was the most impressive witness. She's the type of person who wouldn't tell a lie if her life depended on it," end quote. So I think in conclusion, right, there's a lot of things to consider. Was this an owl? It's entirely possible. Were they primed by whatever they did earlier in the day to be on edge or be fearful or fill in the gaps with something mysterious because of an article they heard about? Totally possible as well. Either way, what we do know at the end of the day is that the family or parts of the family saw something that they weren't sure about, that terrified them, and that's the fact. Now, the unknown piece of it is what exactly it was, and of course, aliens are always part of the picture, but it remains to be a fascinating case. But yeah, that is the Kelly-Hopkinsville Encounter, also known as the Hopkinsville Goblins. Fredo, any final thoughts as we kind of close out this interesting one?
It's interesting because I didn't really get goblins too
Goblins
much.
And ghouls?
I didn't really get the goblins out of this one.
Yeah.
I believe that they saw something. I just I don't know. I kind of lean towards it being like an owl or something, and then it flew away. And it don't seem like they're lying. It don't seem like they're out to make money or anything. But then they're saying that they were in a fight for 4 hours. That's the weird part. So there was something that was they seem like pretty put together people. That's just going off of just really big surface level.
Yeah.
They sold the house and moved. They didn't want to deal with anything. They didn't want to monetize it.
Yeah.
I think they saw an owl, but then to fight it for 4 hours, that's the tough part for that theory.
Yeah.
I don't think an owl stuck around for a 4-hour gunfight.
Only to return. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, despite the pretty harsh statement by Project Blue Book, I do think that there's elements in there that help lay a foundation. If they're not well equipped with the tools to understand maybe what they saw that night or what the initial sighting was with the craft, and they're coming from an emotionally exhaustive religious ceremony, I can see how that would be a breeding ground for seeing something scary and inciting some sort of large reaction. But what they saw that night, I think that will be the forever question. I think owls work as an image. I think it works when you compare the sketches with the glowing eyes, with kind of the height,
Right.
But yeah, if they're firing at this thing for 4 hours, I struggle if I hear an owl. Growing up in Indiana, it's a rare thing where I was. But if I stepped outside, I want to see that owl. I want to hear where it's coming from. I'm lucky if it stuck around for 30 seconds,
Yeah.
And I'm just silently sneaking out. But yeah, man, it's got all of the intrigue and fascination of a typical UFO sighting or alien sighting. It's a quintessential case. And again, thank you, Task Force members, Pink Frapp and Noah True, for submitting this one to us. It was a wonderful one to explore. And also, again, more alien etymology.
Oh, yeah.
We got flying saucers, and now we know where kind of little green men come from.
Yeah, this was an interesting one. And I like the fact that they just opened fire. They're like, I'm not messing with this. Let's just open fire on whatever the hell is outside my house right now.
It's so relatable. Like the Van Meter visitor, you're in a town in Iowa in the early 1900s. You see a large creature that scares the heck out of you. I mean, come on, that's instinct. You've laid that breadcrumb trail for 4.5 years, Fredo. And so I feel like it's scratching that itch. Every now and then you just got to have a case where someone's doing the thing that makes the most sense, where you're going, I'm firing on that monster,
Yeah, I don't know what the hell that is. I'm letting loose.
Bigfoot's going to tear someone's arms off someday, and we're going to be like, that's what you get. Try to take a photo. He's going to attack you. But yeah, this has been the Kelly-Hopkinsville Encounter, kind of culminating a little run of alien episodes that we did here at the top of the year. Just aliens and UAPs on the brain,
People love a good alien. You look good UAP.
Absolutely. People love aliens. Fun mysteries for sure. But with that said, Fredo, I'll see you right back here next Monday for yet another mystery.